Welcome back to Awakened Stories. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Priya.
One story every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Ancient wisdom animated. Now, for the last few explainers, we've been looking at what gets in the way, right? The ego in disguise, the intellect acting as an obstacle, all those mental traps we keep returning to. But today, we're going somewhere entirely different. This explainer isn't about what blocks us. It's about what's actually possible on the other side of all those defenses. What does a human being look like when the ego simply isn't running the show? Today's story is one of the most famous Zen parables ever told about the legendary Zen Master Hakuin. And honestly, we think it's also one of the most deeply misunderstood.
Exactly. We're going to anchor our entire journey today on 4 deceptively simple words. Words that sit at the absolute center of a profound mystery. Oh, is that so?
I mean, it sounds like a totally casual remark, right? Like maybe a polite dismissal. But in the context of this explainer, these 4 words carry the weight of a monumental shift in human consciousness.
Yeah, they represent a state of being that is almost impossible for our modern defense-oriented minds to even comprehend. So let's jump straight into the raw story that birthed this famous response. Right, so the setting is Shoinji Temple. Hakuin is a revered Zen master. He's respected far and wide, known absolutely for his purity and his unwavering dedication to the practice. But then, a massive crisis strikes. A girl in his congregation becomes pregnant. Now, her father is severe, he's strict, and he is absolutely furious. He demands to know the name of the lover, and the girl, panicking and under terrifying pressure from her father, she lies. She falsely names the pure Zen Master Hakuin as the father. In a split second, the master's entire life and legacy are placed on the chopping block.
This part of the story brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the unearned suffering Hakuin had to endure over the years. On day 1, the furious father marches right up to Hakuin, throws the newborn baby at him, and just piles on every insult, every sneer, every accusation imaginable.
And Hakuin simply takes the child. For months, through rain and literal storms, Hakuin walks door to door begging for milk to raise a baby that isn't even his. His lifelong reputation is completely destroyed. He becomes a total outcast.
But then, years later, the guilt just becomes too much. The girl finally confesses the truth. The real father was actually a young man from the local fish market. So the severe father, now absolutely shattered with guilt, returns to Hakuin. He bows deeply, apologizes profusely, and asks for the child back. And Hakuin, he simply hands the child over.
Now, here is what makes this a genuine koan, a paradox meant to break our normal way of thinking. Hakuin uttered the exact same 4 words at both ends of this timeline. At the terrifying moment of the initial accusation, when the baby was literally thrown at him, he said, "Oh, is that so?" And years later, at the triumphant moment of his total vindication, when the father apologized and begged for the child back, he said it again. "Oh, is that so?" Both times, the exact same 4 words.
Section 1. The Honest Resistance. Why this story feels completely inhuman.
Look, I've got to be honest here. My absolute first instinct, and maybe yours too, is to say, this is inhuman. Like, no one actually acts like this. A real person fights back. A real person defends their truth.
And if you're feeling that resistance, you are in exactly the right place. We are so heavily conditioned to defend ourselves, to protect our name, to fight back against injustice, that Hakuin's reaction feels totally alien. It feels like a violation of human nature itself.
Exactly. It's absolutely crucial we hold on to this honest frustration for a minute, because we assume he must be performing this extreme, agonizing version of stoicism, right? We imagine Hakuin sitting in the rain, clutching this baby, silently boiling with rage but forcing himself to be the bigger person. We view it as this massive, superhuman effort of suppression.
But Marcus, according to Osho's analysis of this tale, that interpretation entirely misses the point. The crucial distinction here is that Hakuin isn't suppressing his reaction. He isn't being stoic. He's not performing acceptance.
Wait, so what is he doing then?
It's what Osho calls true absence. There is simply no ego inside him to be offended in the first place. This isn't traditional stoicism, where you grit your teeth, bite your tongue, and pretend you aren't hurt. Doing that takes immense energy, because there is still a you inside screaming that it's unfair.
Okay, I see. So Hakuin isn't working on his spiritual patience? There is simply no one inside who demands that the world be different than it currently is.
Section 2. The Mirror Metaphor. Osho's framing of the true master. To truly grasp how this state of true absence is even possible, how someone can experience such a wild swing of injustice and vindication with the exact same 4 words,
We need to look at Osho's powerful metaphor.
Right. Osho explains that a true master is like a mirror, possessing a quality that just reflects reality exactly as it arrives. Think about a mirror in your hallway. When an ugly, terrifying storm rages outside and is reflected in the glass, the mirror doesn't panic. It doesn't get scarred by the lightning. And when a beautiful, radiant sunset appears, the mirror doesn't cling to it or rejoice. It simply reflects whatever comes before it without being changed, marked, or retaining any trace of it once the event has passed.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Hakuin's reaction was identical both times. A mirror operates perfectly because it reflects without holding an opinion. It reflects without experiencing suffering, and it reflects without rejoicing. It has absolutely no need to defend its reflection.
So, when the furious father appeared with false accusations, Hakuin's mirror simply reflected the storm.
Oh, is that so?
Exactly. And when the apologetic father returned years later with the truth, the mirror simply reflected the clear sky.
Oh, is that so?
A mirror doesn't panic when an ugly reflection appears, and it doesn't cheer when a beautiful one arrives. It just lets reality be exactly what it is.
Now, we also have to push back on a very common assumption here. Many people read this explainer and think, wow, Hakuin's capacity for forgiveness is incredible.
Yeah, I definitely thought that at first.
But we have to push back on the idea that this is a story about forgiveness. Because forgiveness still requires a wound. To forgive someone, you first have to be injured by them, and then you make the conscious choice to pardon them. But Hakuin took no wound at all. You literally can't injure a mirror.
This is true acceptance. There was absolutely nothing to forgive because his ego never stepped in to claim the injury in the first place.
Section 3, the second wound, turning the mirror outward to face ourselves. So how does this ancient, almost impossibly profound story apply to us today? We have to turn that mirror outward to face ourselves. We have to ask, what does it cost you every time you try to prove you are right?
Osho isn't asking us to magically become saints overnight like Hakuin. Instead, he's asking us to examine the enormous energy we spend making sure people see us correctly. Think about your own life. When someone misunderstands you or questions your motives or makes a minor false accusation, how much energy do you instantly burn trying to correct the record?
Which brings us to a really devastating realization. The defense is the damage. The energy spent defending ourselves against a misunderstanding often costs far more than the original injury.
Absolutely. Think of a time you spent weeks obsessing over a false accusation.
No, I've been there. Composing long, angry emails in my head at 2 in the morning, rehearsing arguments in the shower, just exhausting myself to prove I was in the right.
Right. And that exhaustion, that desperate defense, that is the second wound. And it is entirely self-inflicted by the ego. The initial event was just weather, but your agonizing need to defend your identity, that was the hurricane that actually tore your peace apart.
Section 4. Let it move through you. Life beyond the ego's defenses. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want us to sit with the possibility of living beyond our relentless ego defenses. We are so used to walking around in heavy armor, treating every misunderstanding like a mortal threat to our very existence.
But what if we don't have to fight every single battle we're invited to? Imagine the profound freedom of receiving an accusation, a misunderstanding, or a sneer, and simply allowing it to pass over you like weather.
You don't have to absorb it, you don't have to agree with it, but you also don't have to go to war with it. What would it feel like in your body, in your mind, to simply look at the chaos of someone else's misunderstanding, shrug and say, oh, is that so? And just let it pass. Imagine the sheer volume of energy and peace you would get back in your life. I have to say, looking at all this, I don't think I'm capable of that.
Maybe that's the most honest place to start. You don't need to be a Zen master to start experimenting with this. The next time someone is wrong about you and you feel that exhausting, desperate itch to correct them at all costs, remember the mirror. Remember Hakuin. Ask yourself, what would happen if I just let this storm move right through me?